Hello and welcome to episode 38 of Design Curious Podcast. I am your host and mentor, Ericka Ward. Today on the podcast, I have Ericka Saurit, who is a fabulous designer turned brand marketing professional. And I'll tell you all about her in a minute here. But I wanted to remind you about those downloads I have. You can find the links for them in the show notes, but that is the 3 things I wish I had known before I started a career in interior design and the roadmap to becoming an interior designer. So if you're interested in the career and want to learn a little bit more, you can get those downloads and we'll put you on the mailing list so you can always receive the podcast episodes to your inbox each week, as well as bonus content that I might be putting out and more information about my Design Mentor, which is my membership group for mentoring people who are starting out in the career of interior design. So you can find all that information in the show notes. And now let me tell you a little bit more about Ericka. Ericka Saurit leverages a 23-plus year global career in design and marketing to transform brands in the home industry with a process centered on strategy, storytelling, and insight. She began her career as an interior designer, working with ESI and BBJ in New York and Ralph Appelbaum Associates in Beijing for numerous cultural and hospitality clients, including the 2008 Beijing Olympics, 2010 Shanghai Expo, Shanghai Natural History Museum, General Electric, and Procter & Gamble. So that is quite a lot. It's very global and diversified. In 2011, she transitioned to a career in brand marketing for the design industry, continuing her studies in marketing and business strategy at the University of California, Berkeley. A former design educator, she also holds a master's degree in interior architecture and certifications in brand storytelling from IDEO, brand strategy, and social media marketing. As a global brand marketing leader, she has led digital product development and brand strategy at Airbnb in San Francisco, creative immersive physical and virtual brand experiences for Tag Heuer and Estee Lauder, and worked with top home lifestyle brands in U.S., Europe, and Asia to develop award-winning brand messaging and engagement campaigns. Ericka is an inspiring and motivating public speaker, frequently invited to lead industry discussions on marketing, brand strategy, and storytelling for trade events and design conferences around the world. A Southerner at heart and traveler by trade, she maintains residence in both North Carolina and the south of France, which is where she was when I was interviewing her, and I was very jealous because I did live in the south of France for a year doing my college studies, and I really want to go back. So I am jealous of her situation, but hopefully I will get over there soon. So without further ado, let's welcome Ericka to the show, and you'll see that we just really hit it off. She just had so much great information, and I think we could have talked for hours and hours, and as it is a very long interview, but I think you'll find it very interesting. You're now listening to Design Curious, a place where you, creative one, are here to learn about what it really is like to be an interior designer. And I'm your host and mentor, Ericka Ward. If you're worried about how to succeed in a creative career, if you're ready to learn your next steps to become an interior designer, and if you want the satisfaction of doing something you love every day, you are in the right place. Grab a coffee, a notebook, and let's dig into today's episode. Hi, Ericka. Thank you for coming on Design Curious today.
Thank you so much for having me, Rebecca. I'm really excited to be here and talk to you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear your story. I've been really interested in how you got to where you're at. So first, why don't you start out? You were an interior designer, or are. I think once you have been, you always will be.
Always.
but tell us about your path into interior design and what brought you to become an interior designer initially.
Yeah. So I grew up in High Point, North Carolina, and it felt like, well, not interior design directly was around me, but I was always surrounded by the home industry.
Mm-hmm.
And almost everyone I knew, from, relatives to family friends to kids I went to school with, their friends or their parents, everyone was involved in some way in the industry, which was really cool to begin with, because what that showed me wasn't just about the showroom. It wasn't just about the product of, like, I mean, obviously there's furniture manufacturing specifically in High Point, but there's so many other parts and pieces to that industry that have to become part of what goes into making a sofa or a chair or a table or a lamp. Obviously there's an infrastructure for distribution. There's a transportation network. High Point was named because it was the highest point on the railroad, which was shipping things from one coast to the mountains of North Carolina. But then, of course, it went across the country as well. The home furnishing industry in High Point started at the turn of the century, like the 1900s. It's been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
So there was this, manufacturing part, which started from having availability to wood and then cotton, because there's a lot of textiles growing there, or cotton growing and creating a textiles industry as well. So like kind of all of those parts and pieces wasn't specifically about the design or again, the furniture. So it was about all these parts and pieces. And I got to see that really young. It didn't mean anything to me until much later. But now I look back and I think, okay, I get it. And, I get what goes into not just the design industry, but into kind of making and creating things. So growing up, I was super creative. I loved drawing and art and making things. So I originally went to art school for my first degree.
Okay.
And I have a studio art degree, undergraduate, Bachelor of Fine Arts. And while I was in art school, I also took a couple of courses in interior design, sort of at the end, when you have all like leftover electives,
like,
just thinking like, exactly. Like I've always certainly been interested. I grew up, rearranging furniture and, designing other people's houses, whether they liked it or not.
That's always a key indicator.
That's like a symptom.
Yeah.
But so I took interior design classes, and I don't know if schools are organized like this anymore, but they were in the School of Human Environmental Science. So it was not in the art school. It wasn't in the design school at all. It was in a totally different place. So the curriculum was about like, how does interior design, a lot of it was about theory about how, the environment it can change our lives. It can change our point of view. It can change, our health and well-being. And I thought that was all really cool. But, what I was really there for was like, let's design something. Like, I want to figure out what that's about.
Yeah,
definitely. So, okay. I was like, great. Okay. This is what interior design is. This is cool. After graduation, I moved to New Orleans to kind of become an artist and live, live the life lifestyle. And so, obviously that didn't go so well. So I got a job, like a real job, to pay the bills. And I ended up working in a landscape architecture firm. And I thought, whoa, wait a second. This is like, the thinking and the making and the creating. And obviously I'm like very much into plants, but I was like blown away. It had not ever occurred to me, or I had never been introduced to the idea that, artists and designers come from the same place. Like we speak the same language. And so I worked there for a while, and I thought, okay, I feel like this is calling me, like design is calling me. And of course, the principals of the firm were like, yeah, there's many things. Interior design is, if that's what you want to do, look at going back to school. So I went back to school, graduate school, for interior design, interior architecture. And it changed my life. I was able to take my fine art background, my interest in, museums or galleries, and really start to apply that to my graduate work, which was, it was about exhibition design in museums. And so after graduate school, I started working. I taught at the university level for a while. I taught visual communication, got to use that drawing and kind of presentation skills, which I was learning, which I found to be really, really important, just from observing what was happening in this design office as I was working there, internships through graduate school. And then throughout my, I was a TA in, communications courses. And what I was learning then was that it doesn't matter how great your design is, or how really incredible your ideas are about a project, or what you're trying to get out, if you can't present it, if you can't wrap it into a really kind of interesting or attractive or provocative way, if you can't get people's attention right away, and that's not just your professor like in design school, but like your peers, you want to get buy-in from your clients essentially. If you can't do that, you really are going to have a hard time in the design world, because really is about taking very complex ideas
Mm-hmm.
about, psychology and space and, in a sense in architecture and,
Mm-hmm.
all of, again, the pieces of a project that have to come together and creating a very understandable, clear, concise message around that, you're in trouble.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah,
I
that
learned
visual
this.
yeah, that visual communication that you were
Yeah.
studying and teaching definitely comes into play as designers
Yeah.
do their presentations. They have to communicate these complex ideas, like you're saying,
Yeah.
and really sell it to the client. You can't sell
Mhm.
something if it doesn't look attractive, to the
Yeah.
client. So, yeah.
Yeah, and if you can't clearly communicate the idea, right? And again, there's a little bit of kind of psychology around that too. You have to
Hmm.
understand like what they really care about. Are you answering their questions? Are you, really meeting the need that they have, right? If you design something that's crazy and out off the wall, that's great. If you're able to communicate why it's going to be relevant and worth spending money and time on, then you'll get the project. But if you
Yeah.
can't do that, then, all those great ideas and all that hard work doesn't really
Mm-hmm.
mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of learning stayed with me through school, into my practice, into my, working years. And I spent about 10 more years working in mostly hospitality and commercial and
Mm-hmm.
exhibition, so some cultural work. But I did that all over the world. I had the opportunity to
Wow.
travel and spend a lot of time in China, and at a time when China was really booming, and it was the recession here in the US
Mm-hmm.
around 2008, 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of my friends were losing jobs, or they were, in firms where they didn't have a lot of work coming in. And I was in China, like it was crazy. Our
Mm-hmm. I'm
clients were
sure.
like, there's no budget, or, there's like a
Yeah.
crazy budget. We want you to do things that the world has never seen before. So we were like having a ball with design. It was a lot of work, of course, but it was
Yeah.
such an exciting time. And what happened then was I started getting pulled into, I became like the pitch girl. I got pulled
Mm.
into a lot of presentation creation, a lot of new business development, a lot of like fronting on behalf of the agency, like what our ideas were and what our capabilities were and what the potential of the project might be. And so what
Mm.
again I learned was it's really about the story you're selling to the client. You really, our firm had tremendous integrity, of course, so there's all
Yeah.
of this was behind the project, but
Right.
it's really about making sure that you are able to communicate your capabilities, what makes you interesting and different, and what's going to make you really kind of excel at being the best partner. So once I started doing that, I kind of thought, I really love this. Like I really love this. It's feeding my creativity. It's feeding kind of this right and left brain side of me. I'm learning from the marketing team that I'm working with on, how we're measuring the success of certain types of approaches. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, okay, well, marketing is very creative. I feel like I grew up kind of naive, in a very naive way, thinking like
Mm.
things just, interior design was one thing, art was one thing,
Yeah.
everything
They
had
didn't.
sort of a bucket.
Yeah.
And
They
I
actually
was wrong.
overlap. Yeah.
Totally. But again, many people go on this journey where you make your own discoveries. So I had
Mhm.
mine, and it just so happened that I was able to transition into marketing roles out of direct design, like out of drawing wall sections and doing
Yeah.
CAD and kind of doing plans and sketches. And like I said, I kind of never looked back.
Okay.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. After that, I was learning from some of the best, marketing mentors I could find. I was,
Mm-hmm.
eager to understand everything, but I also went back to school and kind of learned a little bit more formally, more principles of marketing and digital marketing specifically, because I kind of saw that
Mm-hmm.
as the future. But now I started my own business. So after over 10 years of doing this kind of hybrid marketing design role, specifically for either design firms, people who do work in the built environments, so both commercial and residential firms. I've also worked with home furnishings manufacturers,
Mm-hmm.
specifically in North Carolina. That's
Mm-hmm.
my passion.
Yeah, I saw on your website you, I
Yeah.
think, worked with Vera Ellen, which
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
recently got to visit their showroom, and I
Oh,
already had loved all the
dreamy.
branding, but I'm like, hey, you're the one behind all of that. So
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
Yeah. No, they have some brands, it's not so hard to sell
Yeah,
because obviously the products are amazing
right.
and The experience is already there. The owners are really committed to creating a vibe, and they own it, and they put all their resources toward doing that. And so it's not so hard.
Yeah, they had a lot of clarity around what their message was going to be. So I'm sure you just amplified it.
Yeah. So that's what I do now. I started my own business in COVID in 2020.
Okay.
I mean, why not? Like everything else in the world is changing. So why not start a business? But I had always been kind of driven to be my own boss, to be an entrepreneur. Kind of runs in my family. And
does it? Okay. I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah. My sister runs our family's third generation business.
Oh.
And so I had always, no one ever complained about their boss at the dinner table, because they kind of were the boss.
Right.
When you own your own company, you don't bring, that kind of stuff home. You bring home other things. But so I'd sort of seen, it just had been part of my life, just sort of working for yourself and making it work. It's a lot of work. It's, as you know, it's complex, and it's a hustle, and it requires a lot of, wearing a lot of hats and figuring a lot of things out. I love that. Like, what is it? Building the plane while you're flying it.
Oh, yeah.
But now there's so many great resources, obviously, for entrepreneurs, and especially for entrepreneurs in our industry, like your podcast, of course. And so we're not alone. And obviously the world changed in such a magical way. Something that really was great that came out of the last few years was that, we may be bound at home. We may be without an office or without a kind of physical place to go back to, but this sense of community, the sense of like digital community, finding people you can, reach out to became so much easier. And now I feel like our mindset has changed. Obviously our working habits and our patterns have changed, but I really appreciate that as a result of, what we've all endured. And I hope that many people started businesses as a result, or were given that opportunity.
Right. And as a result, I think it also kind of helps to fast track some of our businesses as well, because we have so much access now to that resource, and
that's right.
So many mentors right at our fingertips that we can just jump ahead 5 years for it to take so much longer before. So that's great. I'm glad.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Actually. Love that.
Yeah.
Can warp speed.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, just skip the initial parts because you're learning from so many people, and then you're on your way so fast. Okay. So then you started during COVID. And so how has that been for you now that you've been working on your own and for yourself? And
I will never go back.
Never go back. Okay.
Never go back. No, truly, it's, for me, one of my values is independence. Obviously, it's important for me to be able to provide for myself, to rely on myself. And I show myself that every day. And I have such a sense of pride around that, but it drives all my decision making, right? Yeah. If this is going to be a decision that leaves me without a certain amount of independence, either financially or with my time, then I know the answer. So, but also one of my values is have fun and work with people whose value systems are aligned with mine, who also, really respect interior design and its power to change people's lives. That's really important. Most of my clients are interior designers or home brands. So one or the other. Yeah. Architects, but people who make the built environment, I would say. People who bring that to life in all kinds of ways. But if I get a sense, either from, talking to them, that our values don't align, then it's, for me, that's a strong no, because I'm going to come at an angle in my work, which is marketing, branding, messaging, where I'm going to kind of want to draw things out of people. And if that substance not there, it's going to be very difficult for me to provide the best solution. So it's going really well, just simply because I'm committed to my values, and I'm committed to making sure that I'm the one in charge of this, the growth and the trajectory and the success of this company. And I have 2 incredible partners that I work with who help me, and we share the same values. So I would say it's going really well, but it's simply a result of being very clear on what's important to me.
Well, I'm sure that's what you help your clients with as well. So you're showing by example also, and attracting the clients that you want because of your values, and then telling those clients that this worked for
Yeah.
me and this is what you need to do. And it'll bring you
Yeah.
satisfaction. Yeah. Yeah. What would it take to become a brand in the industry? So we talked about how
Mm.
easy it is to start your business because there's so much out there available to you, but then that also creates a lot of noise. And I think that it
Yeah.
is also harder now than ever to become a brand in an industry. Would you say that's like?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, I think it's important for people to be really clear about what that means and to really understand brand's a complex thing. It's
Mm,
not a logo. It's more than a logo.
yeah.
It's more than, your commitment to saying I'm a brand. It's more than what you post on Instagram. It's a feeling. And again, this gets sticky for some people, but brand is literally what the story and the feeling you have inside of you about a product or even a service. So everything we have around us, from the headphones to the microphone we're speaking into, to the clothing we're wearing, to the homes we're in, the cars we drive, the toothpaste we use,
Mm-hmm.
every single thing we've made a decision to purchase or acquire is based on brand. And brand is, like I said, it's a feeling and a story and an emotion you have about that thing that's going to drive you to choose it over something else, right? So in the
Mm-hmm.
case of interior designers becoming a brand, the idea is that you're always going to be like, you're going to benchmark yourself against other designers who you want to be seen as competing with on projects. And there's a
Right.
reality to that may or may not be true.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have this aspiration to, benchmark against certain designers, and that's great. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what you build you're building constantly: the storytelling, the narrative, the messaging, the images, the way, even the way you style your work has to have, a strategy and a purpose to it. That's what I help clients to do, is to kind of figure out, I call it getting your story straight,
Mm.
really digging into, who you are as a business so that you can switch from a business mindset to a brand mindset. And in saying all that, I mean, obviously, just like anything in marketing, there's no quick fix.
Mm.
There's no fast track to becoming kind of a stellar brand, even though some brands seem to rise faster than others, and there's certain circumstances and conditions that they invest in to make that possible. It's not always just
Mm-hmm.
money, it's time, it's networking. So, brand has a long tail, it has a long path, but your investment in that is what is going to help you kind of rise eventually over the, I don't like to say competition, but to rise over and stand out amongst other brands or other designers that
Mm-hmm.
your clients may be considering, either in your area or online, depending on what your service offerings are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I help designers to unpack, is to figure out, first, how do we get there? And second, like, what's the most important part? If I am investing in this over a certain amount of time, where do I start?
Mm-hmm.
And it's cool work. It's my life's work.
Yeah.
It's what I'm meant to do.
Yeah, and definitely because you have a history of being a designer and you worked in the industry,
Mm-hmm.
it really helps you understand your clients as you're working with them,
Yeah.
the struggles that they're going through or the things that they might overlook that are special
Yeah.
or differentiate them from other people that they just take for granted. So I
Oh,
feel like
yeah. It
that
happens
is,
all the time.
yeah, I feel like it's so
Yeah.
common. It's like I need someone else to tell me what my story is because I'm like, I hear it all the time. I see myself all the
Oh,
time. My
yeah.
story is just there. But someone else will tell me, like, oh, no, actually, you're a great listener. And like that,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I really felt heard when we met together. And so getting feedback like that is so helpful. But
Oh, yeah.
I think it's really difficult to, on your own, come up
Mm-hmm.
with that story about yourself and what
Yeah. You're too close to it,
yeah,
obviously.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that one of the ways that you help your clients to you kind of work through their story and
Yep. So
out the things that you think are special?
yeah, it's one of I do this again to not to brand it, but to give people something to remember when they think about, like, what this process looks like. It's very strategic, just like any other part of your marketing, you have to have a plan. A lot of people say, well, I've been trying this and I've been trying that. And I even tried TikTok, and, and I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, well, show me, where's all this coming from? Like, why are you doing all this? Well, they don't have a plan. They're just sort of
Yeah.
doing what other people are doing just because everyone else is doing it. So I should be doing it
Mm.
too, but they don't have any real kind of solid strategy or reason to be doing it. And in the end, sometimes they might get like a little bit of success, but it's not sustainable. And they haven't really thought through exactly like what either to follow up with or how to continue to maintain it. So I always start with strategy. And like I said, there's a 3-part strategy that I use. I call it the E3 because I'm Ericka. E3, and each of these words starts with an E, so it's quite easy to remember. Yeah. So I start with what makes you extraordinary, and that's that really exciting conversation where we get into maybe your background isn't in interior design. Maybe you come from another field or another, whatever, another career. Even I see this all the time, people wanting to enter interior design. It's not always just one thing. It's many things, in fact. But what is the thing that's going to make you, again, when people are looking, most typically at style as benchmarks, you have to be able to talk about substance instead of just style. Like, what is that thing that's going to make you more extraordinary and stand out? So we really spend a lot of time defining what that is. That's your differentiator.
Yeah.
That word seems scary to a lot of people. So I prefer what makes you extraordinary.
Yeah.
The second thing is really, really also, they're all important, but the second thing is super, super important. It's what is the emotional connection that you are bringing to, from your work as a service provider or as a maker of things? How are you going to create that emotional connection with your ideal client or your, whoever it is that you're really trying to serve? And do you understand that there are, again, multiple things that go through our mind? If you think about that purchase decision, and when I was saying, like, if you look around, everything has been decided on something because of an emotional connection or a story that resonated with you, that was relevant to you. And so how are you going to make yourself relevant to your particular ideal, however you want to call it, your target, whatever, your client that you're really trying to attract? And you have to understand those emotional drivers, those core motivations behind the purchase decision. Now, the purchase decision to hire an interior designer, because it's expensive. It's going to take a long time. It can create some disruption in your life. You have to move out of your house, or it's a longer period, right, than the purchase decision to buy toothpaste, for example.
Right.
You really have to think about how long that will take and how will you nurture a relationship to build trust, to, again, make yourself relevant. But all through doing that, you come to that with the understanding about what their true motivation is. And interior designers know that, the decision to renovate or to, redo a space is not exactly what people say. There's always, always, always something deeper. There's always an emotional reason. And that's what we spend a lot of time on too, when it comes to brand, is to say, is there a key driver behind what most of your clients are coming to you for? Or if you're a new designer and you're just starting to plan your brand, what is the core emotion of the clients you want to attract? Right? What are they really looking for? Is it a sense of belonging? Is it, to leave a legacy? And I have 5 of them that I have found over the years really specifically apply to our industry. And so we dig into those and unpack those and create a series of languages around that. And that's where the heart of the messaging begins. And then the third E, the third E is experience. So I don't know how exposed your listeners are to the marketing funnel. The marketing funnel, yeah. Some people use a wheel where it's a circle, we don't have video, but the idea is like, a funnel has very broad at the top and it's narrow at the bottom. And how you think about the experience from the top of the funnel, which would be how people just become aware of you. Usually that happens on Instagram or word of mouth or email, or they can meet you at an event, or, there's many ways to create awareness for your brand. But what's the message you're telling at the awareness part, at the very beginning, when they very first encounter you in the aisle at the grocery store for toothpaste, or like on TV, or they, are at a friend's house or whatever.
Yeah.
How is your interior design brand and service? How are people encountering it? And is the message consistent? Like, are they seeing the same thing over and over again about you that you want them to understand? So that's where we start to think like, okay, so top of the funnel is this awareness, middle of the funnel is or middle of the cycle is, okay, now they know who you are. They're starting to understand what you offer them compared to others, right? They're comparing you. They're making decisions about how relevant your services will be in their life. And so your messages have to, they have to be consistent with with that message you're giving in awareness phase. But then you have to go kind of a little bit further and a little deeper. You're always working toward an idea of sort of authentic, obviously being authentically persuasive. You don't want to, this is where people get kind of turned off by marketing. Like, it feels kind of gross. I don't feel good selling myself. But in a sense, you really should never feel like you're selling yourself. You're offering something that you can provide that's going to really help people and change their life. And that authenticity comes when you're really in tune with, and you really understand what makes you extraordinary and how it's relevant. And then again, looking at it across the experience of all your kind of marketing touch points. And so the last part of that is the decision phase, where they sign the contract and bring you into their life. But right after that, there is, what happens after? How do they share their story? How do they communicate to their neighbors or their friends or whomever, right? Are they still sharing that same message that you want to be communicated about?
Can they be ambassadors now for your message?
Yes.
Like, did they get it? And are they saying the same thing to other people? Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we help with all of that. So we help with not just sort of defining that strategy, uncovering, the 3 E's, uncovering like your extraordinary part, your emotional connection, and then that experiential journey. But then we help create, obviously we do logo design, we do website design, we do email campaigns, which I love.
Great.
So
important.
And social storytelling. So also how do you share that message so people don't get frustrated? Many people come to me initially because of that. I'm frustrated on social media. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to post, blah. If you haven't heard that, I'm sure maybe.
All the
you
time.
Feel it yourself. I do feel it.
Like, what do I say today?
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to touch back on the consistency part of your sales funnel or your messaging funnel. And I feel like there is some resistance when I talk to other designers, especially ones who have been in the industry for a while and are now trying to get on the bandwagon of social media and things like that. Like, they're like, I have a website and I have my pretty pictures on there, and that should be enough. Do you get resistance from, I don't know if people will come to you who are resistant, but like, have you found in the industry that there are designers who are having trouble being consistent with their marketing from their website to their social media? And then also with that, I'll let you answer, but I was just thinking about how like sometimes the consistency is also hard, where you've got your professional like Instagram and you might post a few personal things, but then like on your Facebook personal page, you've got like cat videos up the wazoo, and you're like, I love, but you're not marrying those two things together. Is that an issue, or should you like start putting cat videos on your work? Like, how consistent do you need to be, or should you pivot your personal page?
I'll start with the website question. I do get this a lot. People say, oh, my website's full of gorgeous photos. I don't need any copy. I don't need to talk a lot about myself. And I think, that is not true. You need to meet people where they are. A lot of people will see photos and they will be blown away, and they will say, wow, this work is really good. And they'll form their own opinion, again, because we're coming to this as individual people in different parts of our life. But the words actually, there are going to be people who don't understand space at all. Like a lot of times your clients come from backgrounds where they don't understand what it takes to build, not even like how long it takes to to build out a particular room that you're showing, or a home, or whatever it is, an office, restaurant. They don't understand what designer's value is. And as far as like, they see something, it looks great, they think, okay, they may not understand at all. You don't have to over explain, obviously, but what you need to do on copy, and what's important from my point of view, from the work that we do, is to, again, answer people's questions about that relevancy. How is this going to resonate with the people you want to be attracting, right? Are you communicating how you solve the problem for this client? right? If
Mm-hmm.
you're showing a picture of a kitchen and you're not talking about like, I mean, maybe it was a full renovation, maybe you just replaced, maybe it's just a paint, refresh on the paint.
Yeah.
You have to really kind of not give a full scope, but you have to show and tell people with both pictures and with words, so that again, if someone comes and they're not visual, right? They absorb information by reading, you have to kind of meet them in both places.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, just technically, the copy helps your SEO. So it's going to
Yes.
help you. Yeah. It's going to help you from the technical side, just be found easier and save you money
True.
on
Yeah. Great.
sending people to your site.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that.
Yep. And I think, again, when people are in the decision phase, telling a story, creating a bigger, greater picture about who you are, maybe who your team are, where you live, what's drawn you and brought you to design, and then talking specifically to, again, back about how you solve problems for clients. When people, again, are benchmarking between two, possibly three different options, this is going to help you again stand out because you're telling that story about what makes you different and extraordinary. And perhaps there's something that's, relevant. Maybe you have a shared interest in something, or you have a shared kind of, maybe you come from the same place. I don't know. But, I never think, well, yeah, there's a limit to oversharing. I won't say that. But when it comes to websites, just to kind of wrap on this question, I definitely feel that you have to have, just as much beautiful written information, copywriting on your site as images. And this can also help too for designers who are younger in their career and don't have so many photos, or they feel self-conscious about the photography that they have. Perhaps you bringing people into your story, not just with images, but with words.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah. I think that's going to be a valuable key for up and coming designers to grasp onto when they're feeling desperate about their website that doesn't have very many photos. So that's a great thing to point out.
Yeah. For the social media piece.
Yeah. The social media, like how much do you correlate your own interests with your professional side? And
I'm going to say something that will probably, I don't know. This seems to be a kind of polarizing point of view, but for me, Instagram, and I'll say Instagram specifically first. I don't do a lot of work on Facebook, but I think it's important to have a presence on Facebook. So I will speak specifically to Instagram. I think the way people are consuming content now is that you have to be, obviously, you want to play. If you're motivated by growth, if you're interested in kind of growing the amount of people who are seeing and following you and really understanding who you are and buying into your uniqueness and your specific brand, then you do need to put the work into Instagram, simply because it's a visual platform. We're a visual industry. The algorithm now, and I think it's not going to change in the future, is going to prioritize video, moving content, things that, feel more entertainment. They have an entertainment value to them. So anything you can do to kind of show who you are. And if you want to be very personal about it, just make sure that it's aligned with your values and it's aligned with that thing that makes you extraordinary. I mean, great. If your brand is about homes and cat videos, then for
designing homes for cat people,
totally, you are doing the right thing with the cat videos. But again, if your ideal clients are really into cats and like that's the thing for them, it's going to show a certain story about you, which is great. But check in with that strategy and make sure that that's the persona that, even if it is authentic to who you are, perhaps there needs to be a little editing on, like I said, this is where the polarizing part comes in, because some people believe you should put everything out there. And I think that's great for them. I tell my clients, your feed should be like your website. It should be very elegant. It should show your work that, either you're inspired by and you're crediting back to other designers or whatever, travel, whatever those things are, food, even. All of this becomes part of, the image of your brand. And you want it to look curated, just like your work. You want it to look cohesive. You want it to share a consistent message. And people, again, they're hiring you initially. I think most of the time people are hiring an interior designer for their aesthetic, until they dig deeper and find out, maybe it's more about wellness, or maybe it's
Right.
about history, or whatever. So your feed should reflect that. I think now, like I said, with so much video and digital kind of like moving content, there's a Reels channel now. You can direct people straight, in links to go straight to the Reels part of instead of going to your feed, you can send them to your Reels if that's important to you. I call it kind of interstitial content. This is the thing that's sort of happening in the ether around us. That's where stories go. And you can archive story, or you can, send stories to your highlights and use those kind of like browser tabs, or like tabs on your website, where you can kind of bucket content, but it takes it right out of the initial get to know you. Don't put everything like out at first, like you would if you were posting, daily updates on your gerbil or your cat. This is my point. This is just my opinion. This is how I, steer clients. But I think whatever you do, do it the best you can, and do it with, do it with love, do it with intention.
Yeah.
So
and it's something that you can stand behind, and like
totally.
if the client brings it up, you're like, oh my gosh, you saw that? Not, you don't want that to happen. So you want to be like, oh, hey, that's me out with the cats the other day, or what, like, so.
That's cool.
Yeah. Okay. Really good advice. Okay. So anything else for an up and coming designer thinking about, or someone thinking about becoming an interior designer? Do they need to work with a brand strategy right away as they're building their company, their website, or what should they do?
I think working with a brand strategist requires a very specific intention for your company. And it's an investment, like I said, in time. It's a long-term investment. And I think a lot of times for people who are just entering our field, entering as, new designers, you're thinking about a million things. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It can be a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
What I'll say is the most important, you talked about this with an interview, Bethany. She was your podcast coach.
Yeah.
You guys had a fantastic conversation where you talked about knowing and understanding your why. I think, again, before you wrap your brain around like, am I a brand? How do I become a brand? Because you don't want to get like too sidelined by that you lose track of all the other 50 million things you have to be doing. But I will say, I highly recommend like listening to that episode. But, understanding and defining your values, and understanding and defining your why will be probably the very first thing you should do. Why are you doing this work, and who are you doing it for? And making sure that you, again, check back in with that value frequently as you grow. And when you're ready to do a formal kind of, strategic, a strategy plan for your marketing, for your business, then it's time to invest. I think if you're in the place where you're starting a business and you want to do that right away, then that's great. But a lot of times it takes time that people don't want to put into, slowing down the promotion, or slowing down, what they're doing to get started. Yeah. I think, again, like I said, it all goes back to, making sure you're doing things with intention, and knowing why you're doing them is super, super important. And I would say that's for everything. Like someone said to me once, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's really wise, like the way you fold shirts is the way you, approach, new business relationships. Like, do you do it with intention? Do you do it, quickly to get it over with? You think about the intention behind what you're doing, and own it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so easy to slip back and just let things happen, but to live with intention and to live on purpose takes effort, and it's challenging. And that's why not everybody does it. And that's why you have to be reminded to think about it. So such good advice. So really good. And we'll link that episode with Bethany as well, so people can go back and listen to that. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Such a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
And also me too, Rebecca. This was cool.
Yeah. And just meeting a designer who pivoted into another career, just like Bethany had too. And it's great for our audience to hear that there's things besides just the one-on-one design that they can do. They can branch out into as they discover things about the industry and the career. So thank you so much for coming on today, Ericka.
Thank you for your show. I wish that when I was going through, design education that I had, or starting as a designer, that I had this kind of resource. So I value you and your work, and thank you.
Yeah. And where can we find you on Instagram? I'm sure.
Yeah. Instagram, I get in and I get out. But please, it's at Saurit, Saurit creative. I also have a website, www.saurit creative.com. If you want to kind of do a quick visual check on your brand messaging to make sure everything is consistent, I have a kind of template. It's free. It's called a brand audit to kind of, you go through every channel that you're on, like LinkedIn or, Pinterest or Instagram, your website. There's a prompt to kind of like, what are your clients saying about you? What are your employees saying when they introduce themselves at a party? What do you say when you introduce yourself at a party? Like, what shows up on your SEO? Like when you search yourself on Google, like what kind of shows up? So you want to make sure that story is, my recommendation is that it says nearly exactly the same thing. Like this is not the place to get creative.
Yeah.
Get creative with other parts of your copy, because, no one's going to see every single one of those except for you when you do this exercise.
Right. Yeah.
And if you've been in business for a little while, or, you haven't, minded updating anything, maybe your, scope has changed in your business, or things have changed, you need a little tweak. That is a great resource. And it's Saurit Creative, Saurit creative.com/brand audit, all one word. And you can jump in that and then reach out to me if you have any questions or want to schedule a discovery call. I do 30-minute discovery calls with lots and lots and lots of designers to talk about their messaging and marketing. And I'd love to talk to you.
Wonderful. Well, we'll include all of those links in the show notes so people can easily find you.
Okay,
and
cool.
It's just wonderful to have you on, and we look forward to learning all those good things. I'm going to go check out that brand audit. I think that's going to be really helpful. So.
I hope so. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And, thank you, Ericka.
Take care. Thank you.
So didn't you just love that interview with Ericka? I really enjoy talking to people who used to be interior designers and now are doing something else, because I love being able to promote that perspective to you, that you can start in interior design and even move to something else, even though you might be moving to interior design from another career. So that doesn't mean that interior design is the end of the line. It could definitely branch out into something else you might find a new passion for. Okay, so that is it for this week. I hope that you guys stick around for next week. I've got another great episode about a controversial topic. You'll hear next week what that is. So stay tuned. And in the meantime, don't forget to leave me a 5-star rating and review. I'd love to hear from you on Instagram if you want to slide into my DMs at @rwarddesign. We'll talk to you next week. And until then, stay creative. Thanks for listening. If you love this episode, please leave a rating and a review. This helps me reach other curious creatives like you. If you have a topic request or would like to contact me, simply head over to my website, rwarddesign.com, or email me at podcast@rwarddesign.com.